Yeah, he already getting there. You got 40 seconds left. You got 15 left. Come on, baby. Last one. Hey, there you go. He's ready for you now. Switch it over. All right, cool. Both of y'all up.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? It's your boy Gabe, and we are back with another episode of Bowler Mic'd. Today we're here in Birmingham, Alabama at your boy Fitness Academy, and we have Eryk Anders. He is the number 36 ranked middleweight in the world, not just the UFC. We're talking about in the world. He is a BCS National champion. For the youngins out there, that was a little bit before y'all's time. We're in the playoffs now, but there was a BCS at one point. He was on that team that secured Nick Saban's first national title. So he has one of those rings. That was 2009. And we're going to go into a lot of depth of him talking about his upbringing through football, after football, and his run to the UFC and where he is now as he approaches retirement. So thank you for allowing me to interview you today, Mr. Anders.
You know, it's funny you say the BCS thing, because
Yeah.
I'm like, damn, boy, getting old, man. My son say I'm on unk status, and I'm just like, listen, dude. You know, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I had you when I was young, you know, so I still got some youth left, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you feel that chest start to get a little swole, man, you need to think about that, you know?
Now, how young are you, if you don't mind me
I'm 38.
38?
But I got a 16-year-old, so,
Oh.
you know, he think he feeling himself a little bit. He had a really good year of football this year. He wrestled really good last year. And, you know, so he's trying to get that testosterone surge, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
He has a little mustache coming in. So,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying?
Anders.
He's feeling a little tough, you know what I'm saying? So I got to still regulate.
So I'm glad you mentioned that to kind of go into the first question. How was your upbringing? Because I know things are slightly different in the times we're in now, especially when it comes to sports and recruiting and everything with the NIL. Talk about your upbringing a little bit. I saw that you were a part of a military family, so you moved around a lot.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I had a very high-functioning household. Both parents, 3 other brothers, so 4 boys. So, you know, obviously got a little chaotic and a little Lord of the Flies-ish, if you've ever seen that movie or read the book. Yeah, I'm very fortunate, you know. I was born in the Philippines, lived all across the United States, lived in Japan. So, you know, I was very cultured growing up. I got to experience and see different, you know, cultures, walks of life, ways of life. Lived in and around every socioeconomic background you could possibly think of. And so, yeah, you know, I've just kind of been exposed to a little bit of everything. And I think that's something that, you know, really helped me in my life.
I can agree on that. I haven't been out the country too much, but I know one thing that helped me as a child with just traveling and my parents making sure we're going to different places is it showed me that the world had way much more to offer than the town that I was from. I was born in Atlanta. I know Atlanta can be a big city, but still just getting outside of Atlanta, somewhere like Atlanta, can show somebody that there's a lot more to the world. So I know with you doing all that traveling, you learned at an early age that the world just wasn't the Philippines. You know?
Well, and you know, I try every year. I try to take my son out of the country as well, so that he can have those same experiences. And you know, just like you said, that there's way more to the world than just Hoover, Alabama, where we live. And you know, you can see some of the places we go. You see extreme poverty, you see extreme wealth, and everything in between. So I was like, man, when you think you got it good, boom, you see this, you know, dude living in this palace over here, or you think you got it bad, then you see this family living in a cardboard box on the side of the road. So it just kind of makes you grateful for what you do have and things like that. So I think it's rubbing off on them a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. So now, with all the moving that you did, where did you gain interest in football? Because I know in certain countries it's not as big.
Yeah, well, we lived mostly in the United States. We lived in New Mexico, Maryland, Prattville, Alabama, and San Antonio. So I have an older brother who's 5 years older, and he started playing. I was probably 6 or 7 whenever he started playing. Now, that's kind of who I looked up to growing up. So I was like, okay, he's playing football, I'm playing football. And I thought it was okay. I thought it was cool, whatever. But then as I got older, I realized that the girls liked football players. So I was like, let me go on deep dive in this, you know what I mean? And then I realized I was good at football. And then, colleges started looking at me, and I was like, oh, this can pay for college. Because back then, everybody was like, go to college, go to college, go to college, get education, all those things. And then when I got to college, I was like, man, I might be able to make some money doing this. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of went all in with football. So I played since I was 5, 6 years old, all the way up until I was like 24, I think.
Wow. Dang. So when was that point? I guess was it middle school, high school, where you were really like, all right, this is what I want to pursue? And just from seeing online, I saw at one point you were considered undersized. So what inspired you to still decide, this is still something that I'm gonna put on my dreams to?
I always had that dog in me, and I just never really took no for an answer. I said, man, this is something that I really want to do. There's got to be a way, and it's just up to me to figure out how. So I was 6'1", maybe 200 pounds in high school, playing 3 technique, which is a D lineman at Texas 5A football at the time, as big as it gets. So I wasn't really highly recruited, but like after my senior year, I sat in like the audio visual room, and I made 125. I made my own highlight tape, and then I had to like dub each copy individually. So there were 100 at the time. There were 125 FBS schools. So I sat there for days and made these tapes one at a time, 125 of them. And then the internet isn't what it is now, so I had to like look up the addresses to the football office at all these schools.
Wow.
Write it down. Then I had to take all these tapes I took it in like a box to the post office, and the lady looked at me like I was crazy, and I was like, nah, you need to you need to do this. I'm trying to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And then how I got to Alabama is I was actually kind of lucky because I had one of the assistant coaches when he was in college. He was roommates with, at the time, Bob Conley, who was the offensive line coach. So they just remained in touch. They're best friends. And he came to one of the summer camps that Alabama has, and he was like, look, this kid is a dog. He's a hustler. You're not going to have a problem at him. He's a high character guy. And, give him a shot. Worst case scenario, he'll be a really good special teams player for you. And then a highly recruited running back didn't qualify academically to come to Alabama like 2 weeks before two-a-day started.
Wow.
And so the scholarship just, from the heavens opens up. And my name's at the top of the list because Bob Conley was like, hey, check this kid out. And man, I was in Hawaii. My brother had just got married, and I was actually hungover. My phone rang, and I'm kind of like, hello. And he's like, hey, Eryk, it's Coach Shula, Coach Mike Shula, University of Alabama, head coach of the University of Alabama. I'm like, hey, hey, Coach, how are you doing? He's like, hey, we'd like to get you on a visit, yada, yada, yada. And then, the stream of luck even continued. I get there and, they're taking me around the facility or whatever, showing me everything. And, he kind of looks at me. I meet Shula. He looks at me and he's like, how much did you say you weigh? And I was like, 215. Dude, I'm like maybe like 198, like probably closer to 195. And he was like, all right, dude. I wore boots and everything, so I looked taller and, the whole nine. And he said, okay, we're gonna get on that scale, and if you're 1 ounce under 215, we're not gonna offer you. Dude, I started sweating bullets, and I was like, hey, no
Losing
way.
more weight by sweating.
I was like, I'm already here. I got on the scale, and the scale didn't work, so he just had to take my word for it. And like 10 minutes later, I was in his office signing my letter of intent.
What a blessing.
That's how I got to Alabama.
That's amazing. And I'm glad you shared it in that detail, because I was curious on if you had put in any additional work before you ended up getting that call. So, and like you said, you literally put in tons of hours creating your own film, literally shipping it out to all of these schools.
I had no idea how the recruiting process worked. I didn't realize that, everybody had signed like their junior year or early in their senior year. Like everybody, there were no scholarships even available because for that class, everybody had already signed. So I was really just kind of spinning my wheels, you know what I mean? But no one told me, they just sat there and watched me.
Wow.
No one wanted to, tell me that ugly truth. And I'm glad they didn't, because, man, I made all those tapes. I got up every morning before school, lifted and ran and did my conditioning and stuff and stayed on top of it, past football. So I'm really kind of glad that nobody said anything, because, that may have been the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
And that could have just been it. And, now I'm, just a regular student doing nothing. Or just, I ran track too. But maybe I'm just doing that. I really don't know what would have happened if I would have known. So I think, it ended up being for the best.
Right. I believe that's super important, especially nowadays, because a lot of young athletes rely heavily on their coach to get them that attention, but they don't realize until later that it takes a lot of work from them as well. Like, you put in a whole bunch of hours, of course, getting up early in the morning, training. Honestly, setting up your own film and sending it off is huge in itself, because most times, if you are the star athlete of a team or something, the coaches, most coaches might knock that out for that specific athlete.
Dude, I was the only kid on the state I was first team all state. I balled, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like I was a guy who wanted to play but couldn't play.
Yeah.
He's too small, too slow, too whatever. No, I put up numbers, So I knew that I could play, At the time, like the stigma behind Texas high school football, it's like the best in the country, and then some of the best programs in the country, and then we're 5A, so we're the biggest schools. So I was like, yeah, I'm balling out against all these kids. I played Jamal Charles in high school, and a couple other people, that went on to.
Because Jamal Charles went to Texas, right?
Yeah, he went to. He's from Bryan, Texas.
Okay.
And so, we played some good athletes, and I'm like, yo, I can play. I see him. He's a few years older than me. I see him balling, We shut him down. I could play too. So, I really didn't know what I didn't know about the whole recruiting process, and had I known, maybe I would have went to like camps and, try to do it a little bit differently. But I think it had to happen the way it happened for me to get where I was, because whatever, let's say I did know the recruiting process, and they're looking at a D lineman that's 6 foot, 200 pounds, 6'1", 200 pounds, that's like D2, D3, so maybe I take the first thing that come and I don't make it to Alabama, so.
Yeah. That's.
I think the story is written the way it needs to have been written.
Exactly.
If that makes sense.
Man, so you were dedicated, and that's amazing, because a lot of people do end up giving up around that point, especially if they don't have the support that they had hoped for. So just by you putting in that extra work on yourself, you knew, in a way, you manifested it. All that work you were putting in, you were creating that vision. That's basically what it was. So now, and like you said, you're glad you did it that way, because you learned something very valuable that now you can pass down. Now you know how to do it the exact way for your son. Now you know you can take him to these camps and stuff, because those camps do help, especially now. But knowing what you know is what's gonna take your son even further.
He was just on this thing called Huddle. They can all like make their own highlight tapes, and they can send it to the colleges and coaches themselves. And he was like, oh, look at this highlight tape. I was like, damn, dude, you just did that in like 10 minutes, dude. He was like, yeah. I was like, man, I had to sit in front of this big computer with all these like buttons and things, and I was like, yo, somebody show me how to do this? And then, somebody showed me how to do the first one, and then, you know, you really don't know what you're doing for real. So, you know, I messed it up a bunch of times and made a tape that didn't record anything, and then recorded over another one, and then finally, you know, after like rep 10, I was like, all right, cool. And then it was kind of automatic.
Flowing. Yeah.
High knees. Butt kickers. Facing inside, shuffling. Facing outside.
So now, tell us about that transition and progression through the Alabama depth chart from your freshman year.
Yeah, so when I got here, I was just kind of like, who's left? So I was like the last picked, you know? You know what I mean? And so they really didn't know what to do with me. They were like, you want to play running back? You know, you can run. I was like, dude, I haven't played running back since I was like, you know, in 8th grade or whatever. And he's like, okay. So, you know, they ran a 4-3. So they're cool, we'll put you a linebacker, but really, in defense, you move forward. Like, you go from, like, you know, corner to safety because you get bigger, stronger, or whatever. So you go from, like, corner to safety, safety to linebacker, linebacker to DN, DN, and then you go forward. You really don't go backwards a whole lot. So, you know, you go from being in the trenches with your hand in the dirt and, like, there's not a whole lot to see. Now I have to see, like, 180 degrees, and I have to see what this dude's doing, this receiver over here is doing. And then on top of that, everybody was fast. Like, I remember, like, the first, you know, scrimmage we had, he said, you know, hut, and everything just turned to like a blur. I was like, damn, even the linemen are fast. You know, like, you know, division, you know, Alabama is like obviously a major Division I program. And so I was just like, shit, you know, I might have bit off more than I could chew. And I think everybody goes through that unless you're that dude, unless you're like a Julio Jones who you already know physically, like, ain't nobody messing with you.
Yeah.
But I was not that. So it was, you know, kind of a little overwhelming at first, but then, you know, just like everything else, you know, after a few reps, you kind of get it down, and now you're like, you know, moving your way up the depth chart and stuff, and then Shula gets fired and Saban comes in, and there's zero chance, absolutely zero chance, Saban would ever recruit a person in my position at my size, you know, but he was stuck with me. You know what I mean?
Did he tell you that? Like, did he mention something like that?
No, but I see the people he recruited, like Courtney Upshaw, you know, that guy's like 6'3". You know, he was I've never seen anybody grow so fast. Like, I think when he got to Alabama, he was like 225, like yoked. By the end of the summer, he was 260 pounds. And I was like, bro, okay, he's from Eufaula, Alabama. It's like the middle of nowhere. Probably didn't even have a weight program. So he's like 225, just naturally, you know, off bread and water, you know. And then he gets on a weight program. Now he can eat as much as he wants. And now his body, everything that it wanted to do that it couldn't do because it didn't have the nutrition or it didn't have the weights behind it. Now he's got everything he needs for his, you know, body to maximize his potential. And I was just like, Jesus Christ, dude. And then, you know, it happened to a couple people. Like Julio Jones came in 6'4", 210 with a 405-pound bench press as a receiver and like a 42-inch vert.
He was a strong.
You know, Trent Richardson, he was so big, they told him he couldn't lift weights anymore.
Pensacola in the house, Trent Richardson.
Yeah, he was just over there working out like a pitcher in baseball, doing some like arm stuff, like stuff for the joints.
I'm gonna be honest, when Trent was in like senior year and then going into Bama, he used to put his workouts on YouTube that he would do like around Pensacola and stuff, and I used to watch him. I used to be in the gym.
Yeah.
Trent Richardson workouts. Yeah. I'm like, oh, I need to do that. Trent's doing that. So.
Yeah, but this is the thing. Trent could have did Pilates, and he would have been straight. You know what I mean? So it's just like, yo, these guys are like anomalies. You know what I'm saying? And Marcel Darius and Terrence Cody and, you know, all these guys. Mark Barron's the only other person that I know that moved backwards. He played linebacker and running back in high school, and then they moved him to safety. And You know, he was a freshman All-American and an All-American. He's one of the best athletes I've ever seen. He got this one interception against Mississippi State. He must have been 10 feet in the air and, you know, kind of Odell'd it with an interception. And I was like,
I'm gonna look it up.
if there's one dude I played with who I think could have had a fighting career, it'd be Mark Barron.
Now, one thing I am curious about, because you talked about it a little bit, how was that change when Saban came in? Like, how does that work when a new coach comes in, especially of what Saban ended up being for Alabama? How was that? Does the depth chart become default? You know what I mean?
Well, you know, they fired Shula in the middle of the night, then we lost our bowl game, and, you know, they were going after Rich Rodriguez, who was at West Virginia. He was Geno Smith's coach, I believe. And if you play offense, that's great. You know, they were putting up numbers. I think one game Geno threw for like 450 yards, 500, some crazy number like that.
I think I remember that.
And they put up like 45 points. But the team they played, that quarterback also threw, it might have been Baylor, I think. That quarterback threw for like 20 yards less than Geno Smith. Wow. So he also had a crazy game. 5 touchdowns, some crazy stat line. So if you play defense, Rich Rod ain't the guy you want to play for, because you know there's no chance you're getting drafted on a team that's giving up 45 points, 400 yards receiving, and 5 touchdowns. They're not even looking. They're looking at who's catching the ball and who's throwing it. You know, so if you played, everybody on defense was like, yo, I'm out. They hire him. And then Saban, you know, then they announced that they hired Saban. So everybody was like, shit, I think I'll, you know, let's see what's going on. And then, you know, he comes in and, you know, he tells everybody, I haven't asked anybody about anybody in here or your character. I know nothing. But he recruited half the people in the room, so he already know. He didn't have to ask anybody. He already knows everybody from high school.
Okay.
You know, for the most part, because he was at LSU, then he went to the Dolphins for a year. And he came, so he was only out of college football for a year. Mm-hmm. So all these guys that he recruited at LSU are now in the Alabama room. Now he's in the Alabama room. So, you know, he tried to hit us with that, you know, I ain't asked nobody, I don't know nothing. I'm like, of course you don't, because you already know. You know what I mean? Like, ain't nothing changed in a year, you know. That kid still runs the same speed, he's just a little bit bigger, you know, whatever. So he did, I know he did, you know, say one time that, like, you know, each position he has, not even him, like he had like a director of operations who I got close with and who had been with him forever. He was like, yeah, you know, he likes, he had like at each position he has like a stature chart. Like he likes his offensive linemen to be 6'4", you know, 300 plus pounds. You know, he likes his offensive tackles to be 6'5" plus. You know, he likes his jacks, his outside linebackers, which is what I was, 6'4", 260. I'm only 6'1". I think at the time maybe like 235. I was like, fuck.
So the pressure was on.
Right, man. I mean, I knew I could still play.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, you can say whatever you want about size, but I've always been the smallest dude.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So this ain't nothing new to me. You know, the thing, I was like, man, I don't want him to think that I can't play because I'm not a certain size. So when he first got there, I was with him for 3 years. The first year, I ain't hardly get no clock. Then the second year, he saw that I had like an ability to rush the passer, so he put me in on like third downs or obvious passing situations, and I'd go, you know, like go chase down the quarterback or, you know, make plays or whatever. And then my senior year, I earned my starting spot. Just because I didn't take no for an answer. No matter how they tried to shuffle and move around and, you know, the offense or the linebacker position, like he tried to put Dante at Jack and me at Will, and then he moved him back and then put this person there, then me at Sam, and then, you know, the Corey Reamer was in the mix, Upshaw was there. But, you know, I didn't give him the choice, right? This is how it has to be. This is the best combination of linebackers. I was the best at what I did. I could stop the run too. I proved that. And had a pretty decent senior year.
So you were determined, and I mean, having Trent and Mark to practice against, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, Mark won the Heisman that year.
Yep.
Yeah. Whoa! Now look, I'm not just switching my feet straight. I'm gonna angle my foot out over here so that now my foot's on an angle. My hip can open, and I can kick right from where I land at. I'm gonna kick. I'll land in the opposite stance, and then I'll just drop this other leg back, and I'll be back in my original stance. So, bop, 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 whoop, boom.
So now, if you can relive that entire 09 season, y'all aren't losing the game. You were one of the leaders in tackles your senior year, if I remember correctly, and then just going to that last game of the season. Texas has the opportunity to drive the ball to try to take the lead, and you come in with the freaking sack fumble to secure that lead and go on to win the national championship to get Saban as well as y'all your first ring.
I think if you want to relive that season, you have to rewind it a little bit further to the last two games of the 08 season.
Okay.
We were undefeated then too. Then we played Florida. Lost to Florida, and then got absolutely obliterated by Utah. So all the returning, everybody who didn't graduate kind of came together and was just kind of had a team meeting, and we need to get it together. And I've never been a part of a team ever at all the sports I played, and even now with MMA and stuff, I've never been part of a team that was more in unison and harmony and in sync with each other. I knew exactly what you were going to do. I knew what every person on the defense was doing on every play. And everybody was just kind of knew each other to the point where it's I know he's going to do this, so I need to do that, or I know he's going to be there, so I don't have to do too much because I know, whatever. I know Javier Arenas is going to do what he needs to do. So when I go out, to cover my area, I don't have to do too much. And everybody was just kind of on the same page about everything. Now then you go into summer, and now everybody's grinding together, sweating together, bleeding together. And then you go into the season. I think we played Virginia Tech first. It was either Clemson or Virginia. I think it was Virginia Tech. Beat Virginia Tech, and we go through the season. We beat everybody. We beat Georgia at home. They had the blackout.
I remember that. Was that Noshawn? Was that
Noshawn Marino? Yep. And then
Stafford.
Matt Stafford. Yep. AJ Green. They had a few, pretty good players.
I wonder if Jeremy Lomax, defensive end. It's a cousin of mine. He played for Georgia.
I don't know too much about defensive players because I was always worried about offensive players. They had another running back who came after Noshawn, who was a beast.
Not Green.
Beat McFadden, Darren McFadden.
They had that combo at Arkansas. McFadden and I can't remember his name.
Jones. Felix Jones.
Felix Jones, yep.
Yeah, and LSU, had a squad. And we went to 3 overtimes with LSU at Tiger Stadium. So that's probably the craziest experience that I have, man. The game was so long, but it was so loud too. We're not having this conversation right now with the stadium as loud as it was. It was so loud it registered on the Richter scales what they measure earthquakes with.
What?
And then we ended up winning, and then as we're going in the locker room, they're like, "Yo, keep your helmet on," because they was, throwing beers and all kinds of stuff. But it's one of the best wins, most satisfying victories ever. Then we ended up, we beat Auburn in Auburn, and they organized a thing where they would put the whole city of Auburn was gridlocked, so that we couldn't get to the stadium. You know, we get to the stadium several hours before the game, and they actually planned to have everybody out on the road in their car, so we couldn't get. They knew what time we were going to go to the stadium. We were just stuck in traffic, even with the police escort, because there was so much traffic. So we get to the arena, I think maybe like an hour before the game starts. And then, like before a game starts, the specialists go out there. They're out there catching the ball. They're out there throwing, fielding punts and kickoffs and things. The kickers are warming up. But it's like, get there, get your stuff on, and go.
So they were basically trying to just throw y'all off, throw y'all's game off. Mentally.
Yeah. But, I'd like, to be honest, like I kind of like applaud their effort. It almost worked, because they got up like 24-0. In the first quarter, and then we were able to like come back, and then Roy Upchurch, caught like the game-winning catch or whatever. Will set us up to win the game. So and then we rematched with Tebow, and that has to be like, as far as name value, one of the best teams. Chris Rainey. Tim Tebow. The year before they had what's his name, played for the Vikings, number 12. He ended his career because he had like too many concussions and he was getting headaches and stuff.
Was it Percy? Not
Percy Harvin.
Percy Harvin,
the year before they had Percy Harvin, who I think is like one of the best football players ever.
Yeah.
The Pouncey twins, they had a squad, dude, and we beat them. Like Aaron Hernandez. Not only did we
they had a
beat
tight
them,
end. Yep.
Yeah, we smashed them, and that's when Tebow was crying and stuff.
Okay, I was gonna say I remember that.
And then we went on to play Texas, who I think was undefeated and narrowly won against Nebraska in the Big 12 championship. And for me, like I remember, like we played before them, so we get on the bus, and it's like the fourth quarter. The game is super close to Ndamukong Suh for Nebraska. He had like 4 sacks in the game, and he was just harassing Colt McCoy. And for me, like I want to play Texas. I'm from Texas. Texas ain't give your boy a look. I wanted to go to Texas because Vince Young is probably my favorite college football player of all time, and I would have been there in 2005. That was my freshman year when Vince Young single-handedly beat USC and Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, Lindell White, and all those guys. Vince Young basically did it by himself. So that was like Texas. That was like 90 miles from my front door. But they didn't give your boy a look, so I'm just like, that's what I want to play. And then they end up winning. And then we go on to beat Texas, and I probably had the best game of the season against Texas. So for me, the final chapter couldn't have been written any better. I beat the school that I wanted to go to, who I live, an hour and a half from. He didn't give me a look, and then I, essentially have the game-winning sack, fumble, all that. So for me, whoever the author of the book is, couldn't have written any better for me.
Wow. Man, you might need to turn that into a little movie or something. For real, dude, that's crazy. Starting from that 08 season, just like you explained it.
Yeah.
Man. So now, how was it after that? Training for the NFL and things of that nature, like leading up to MMA?
I just knew that I was going to get a shot just because of that last game. Like, at least around Tuscaloosa, my name was hot. Like around Alabama, my name was hot. So I was like, everybody, gassing me up. This agent want to talk to you, that agent. I ended up signing with John Phillips, who actually came in here the other night. He came up from Jacksonville to go to the Oklahoma game, or whoever they played before Oklahoma. And
I forgot who they played.
Maybe LSU. And I think it was LSU. And then he came in here that Monday. So he's always still been a close friend. I just knew that it was going to get in the league, make some money. You know, at the time, the short defensive end, the little guys were, you know, they had the Elvis Dumervilles and the James Harrisons. Freeney, yeah, he's like 5'11". So I was like, man, there's, you know, shorter guys like killing it right now. I could be the next one. And it didn't work out like that at all. I got on with Cleveland. They kept me there for a hot second, got cut, went to Canada, got cut, and then played a year of arena football, and it was just like, yo, if it ain't the NFL, I don't want to play. And then I came back to Tuscaloosa. I already had my son. I had him my senior year before the season started. So I came back here to Tuscaloosa, the same city where not even a year before, I had just won a national championship. So I thought for sure there's some kind of booster or alumni that's got a job for me. Mm-hmm. And then I would go to lunch with all these guys. The university would be like, hey, reach out to this guy. And so I'd go to lunch with all these CEO of these companies and whatnot. And, they would want to hear nothing but Nick Saban and Mark Ingram stories. And I was happy to share because I thought that's how this thing was going to work. Mm-hmm. I'm going to come here. Obviously I played for Bama. We're going to chat, and then you're going to offer me a job. I'm going to say, okay, and then I'll start on Monday. Man, it's happened like 6 times. Every time that I went and talked to somebody like that, they were like, like at the end, the check comes, and, I'm just like, about that job that, you said that we were going to talk about while we're here. He's like, oh, well, we don't have any openings. And I'm just like, so why you bring me here under the pretense of a job interview? If you just want to come, feed me lunch, I'm broke, of course, I'm going to come anyways, and I'll give you the same energy and all that, but, I came here because you told me, not somebody else told me that you had job openings or whatnot. So, I went from the highest high winning national championship to the lowest low. I just did whatever I could. I was a janitor. I used to clean LabCorp downtown Birmingham. Then somebody who lived underneath me in my apartment complex also had the last name Anders and was like, we're cousins. And I was like, oh yeah? I don't know. Whatever. And then I found out her mom had contracts with apartment complexes where they go clean up the apartment complex after people move out and whatever, get ready for the next person. So I was like, yo, I need a job, what's up? So I was cleaning apartments, and then through a temp agency, I got a job cleaning factories, which was a scary thing because we were using a water lance, which is like a pressure washer on steroids. It can cut sheet metal. So people were losing their fingers and their toes because, man, when I came there for the orientation, this old head, he took me to the side, and I was the only one who showed up in a suit. Everybody else was in a t-shirt, jeans, and boots. And I just seen this dude the whole time, just and after the orientation was over with, he was like, come here, man. He was like, listen, I'm gonna tell you something, you need to remember this. You're different. You're not supposed to be here. But since you're here or while you're here, just know that 90% of the people who work here have been strung out on meth at some point, and 80% of that 90% know how to manufacture it. So, the dudes would be up for 3 days cleaning these factories. Whoa. And then they would be nodding off with this, crazy strong pressure washer and fall asleep and cut off their toe with this water lance. And so I never did it, dude. I never touched it. I was like, nah, I don't trust none of y'all. If y'all want to fire me, whatever. So I just kind of and then they had a vacuum, and again, people would fall asleep. It's a giant vacuum that's attached to a truck, and dudes would get their arms stuck in it, and all kind. Their arm wouldn't get ripped off or nothing, but it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
The little flex pipe or whatever draws up, and it'll like pick you up out of the air kind of thing. And I was just like, man, I cannot believe this is where I'm at right now. And then I got a job for Coca-Cola. And then shortly after that, my buddy, Ali Sharif, got me a job at the Redstone Arsenal, and I thought I had made it, dude. I was like, I'm a government employee or a government contractor here in a little bit, a few years. They'll bring me over to the government side of things, and I'll sit here for 20 years and make a bunch of money, sitting at a computer. And I was already like training and fighting and stuff. I had no idea. Like I liked fighting. I wanted to fight, but make it to the UFC and make a bunch of money, I don't know.
You're just doing it, stay in shape.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like fighting. I always did, but has like an actual job and a career. Like I have this stable job here, and then I can make into a career. Like, I wasn't really thinking of rolling the dice and taking a risk. I'm gonna take the sure thing with this government job. Well, about 2 years later, my contract ran out, and I was training like it was my career. I really was. Like on the weekends, I would come down to Birmingham and train with Chris Conley and them, and then I would dip out for 2 weeks and go to American Top Team and like various other gyms around the country just to get a taste of everything, because I really, really loved training with like high level people and famous people and famous fighters and stuff. And everybody just kind of, I think because, I fought and, I had the Alabama background, that people were like more like accepting and inviting for me to come. So that was cool. But then like my contract ran out with the government and they didn't renew it. So man, they told me, I went to my apartment manager and I was like, yo, I lost my job.
This is like 2012, 2011, something like that?
Something like that. Yeah, this is a long time ago. And they let me out of my lease that day. I went and got a U-Haul, packed all my stuff. I drove the U-Haul, my homeboy drove my car down to Birmingham. While I was on the way down there, I rented a storage unit, tossed my stuff in there, and pretty much couch surfed for a while until I found my own apartment. And then got a job. I forget what I was doing. I did like customer service work, which was the worst, because you talk to somebody on the phone and they're all pissed off and just saying very unnice things to you. And I'm just like, dog. And not because it was me, not because I could fight or I was training or whatever. I was like, there's zero chance that you would say this to my face. You just wouldn't, because like I said, I could be like 5'6", like people don't talk like that to other people, like just some like crazy shit. And they'd be like, I'll beat your ass if you don't. And I was just like, would you?
Right, especially something that you kind of don't have anything to do with. You're just an employee for that.
Yeah. I try to tell them. I was like, bro, like, listen, just do this and I can get it done like right now. But if you don't, it's gonna take like 2 days. And then they would just go on and on and on. And I'd be like, all right, fuck it then. Take it the long way or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I could afford to work at the gym. And that's probably when I met my biggest growth as a fighter, is when I started working at the gym, because all I did was teach and train. So even if I wasn't actually like physically doing the move, like I would rep it out as I was showing somebody, then I had to explain it. So somebody who's not an athlete, or if I was teaching a kid's class or teaching like an adult who had never like played sports, or you'd be amazed at some of the people that would come in that you tell them throw their left hand and then they lift their right foot, and I'm just like, yo, that's not. But then like you see the light click, and then now like they're actually doing stuff after some time and training, and that was like such a rewarding thing for me, to be able to teach and instill something in somebody, an actual skill that they could use in like a self-defense thing or a jiu-jitsu match or tournament or a kickboxing match or whatever. So I got a lot of joy. That's when I realized I had such a joy for teaching. And when I was working there, I realized that's probably what I want to do after I get done fighting. And then I got signed to the UFC, and then that's all I did was train. I didn't have to work at the gym. After I think my third UFC fight, I was the main event against Machida, and then ever since then, I pretty much only had side hustles and training.
So now, at one point when you were working at the gym, is that kind of when you were like, this is something I want to do professionally, like as you were coaching?
Yeah, well, after I lost my job in Huntsville with the government, I said, all right, well, you ain't got no backup plan. So your backup plan just became your main plan. So I went all in on fighting. And even when I was like working for Coca-Cola and stuff, they'd be like, yo, are you going to keep fighting? Because, we don't want the customers to see you coming here with a black eye. And I was just kind of laugh it off. And I was just like, that'll work its way out of my system sooner or later. And but I had no intention of quitting because I really liked it. I liked it way more than driving the Coke truck and putting Cokes in the coolers at gas stations. And it was a cool job, dude. It paid well, but at the end of the day, I just wasn't satisfied with it. But it was way better than working at a desk because, I was outside doing like physical, stuff. So I really did actually enjoy it, but I was like, this ain't it, forever. This is just for the meantime, in between time.
Temporary employment. Get where you want to be.
Whether you say, of course I didn't tell them that, but,
right.
I was like, oh yeah, sure, dude. I'll be, by the time I'm 30, I'll be done, whatever. But, I just, always liked training and whatever, so I was always going to train no matter what. And like I said, after my third UFC fight, I got a bigger contract, got a main event bonus and like all this. It was almost like money was falling from the ceiling. And then looking back now, like then it was big money, but now I'm just like, man, I did a lot for a little, you know what I mean? But now I'm in a place where like this is all I do is fight, and I was able to buy this place and open a gym, and it's kind of coming like full circle.
Yeah, and that's what really mattered. You were doing what you love to do, because you came in on your debut with the knockout. So from there, how like up until now, and I know you mentioned earlier that you potentially looking at doing your last fight and go ahead and taking the gloves off. How has your experience been since that debut fight? Describe it.
Dude, it's been great, dude. I've had so many memorable moments in the cage. Met a lot of people that are going to be my friends forever. Traveled the world, trained all over the world. So it's been a great experience. And fighting in the UFC, I always knew that like you're not going to get rich fighting in the UFC. But fighting in the UFC is going to open all these other doors for you to walk in, because people think that's cool that you're a UFC fighter or fought in the UFC. They don't even know what MMA is. They think UFC is MMA. It's like, oh, you fight UFC? Like they think UFC is mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
UFC is just a promotion, and they do MMA fights. So like the UFC brand carries so much weight. I got to be in Cobra Kai, like in that TV series, because of that. I've gotten to train all across the world at some of the biggest gyms because, I'll drop that. I'm like, yo, I'm in town, I fight in the UFC, whatever. Oh yeah, come on in. Usually we don't have, people walking in off the street or whatever. But I know somebody everywhere now, because I fight in the UFC. So it's opened a lot of doors for me to, pursue business and like meet people who are into business and things like that. So now, now that I, know people, I can be like, yo, I have this idea, and like, what about buying this, or what do you think about, this business idea? And people will give you free game. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I don't have to Google it. I can just call somebody and be like, hey, I was thinking about this investment. I know you're in this, in this space. What do you think about it? He's like, oh yeah, it's a good idea, but they're charging too much. You need to try to talk them down or haggle them or, be patient. That's probably the thing I learned the most about,
So
being in business is patience.
Patience, yeah.
Right, you gotta cook them a little. You gotta cook them a little bit. If they see or feel that you're antsy or giddy, you're not gonna get the best deal. But if you just, oh, okay, cool, and just kind of be like stoic. And your mannerisms and your body language and stuff, they want to make that sell too, and then sometimes like volume for, depending what it is, volume is more important than the actual price of whatever it is they're saying. So they do have some wiggle room. You just kind of let them sit and stir for a little bit, and they'll be the ones to get antsy, and then you'll be able to see it on them. And then they will come down on the price or, kind of meet you where you want. Or, if I'm negotiating at a price for an appearance or something, they're like, oh, shoot way high. And then they're always, no matter what you say, they're going to offer you lower. So if you, like whatever, but if you want $5,000 to appear somewhere, say 10, and then they're going to come with 7. And then boom, 5 is like your bottom number, right? So say something way above that. And then they're going to meet you somewhere in the middle, and you're going to make it sound like they got a deal, but you just got $2,000 more than what you were hoping for. And that's just like a random example, random numbers. So I've done that countless times because when you first start, like you don't know all that. I remember being like, yo, I don't want to say too high because I don't want them to say no. If they say no, then like they don't value your time. That's what you're giving them is time. Look at everything you have to give up. Like right now, like I have to give up being at the gym and training and coaching. I have to, bring somebody in to teach the class. I have to give up time with my son. I have to, time means more to me than anything. Outside of my kid, So
yeah.
I don't have a lot of that, so if you want that, you gotta pay for that.
Yeah, and I get that 100%. I have a 3-year-old who'll be 4 next month, and I always tell myself that time and energy is way more valuable than the money, that I chase, But it's interesting that you mentioned that because it kind of makes sales and that type of work exciting. And that's really what you brought to the octagon. My first fight that I ever attended was in Orlando, 2023.
Oh, okay.
I was up high with me and my buddy. We were there, man, and you made that fight so exciting, dude. That's I was like, okay, like we got to attend some more fights. And my wife really likes it too. She was pretty bummed out about Shevchenko and Weili fighting this past week. Those are her 2 favorite fighters. But after I got my little experience with my buddy, I told my wife, like, we need to attend some more fights. We have to do this together. And we've attended probably about two fights since then. We try to make every Florida card. That's our goal. It's tough, but if they're in Jacksonville, we're in Pensacola, 4 or 5 hours away, we got to go. Orlando, 6 hours from us technically, so we've got to make sure we go. But of course, it's nothing like attending a fight in Vegas. But,
sure.
So, to kind of wrap up, I just want to know, and this is for anybody out there that might happen to even be in the area. What are your, I would say, long-term goals, even short-term and long-term goals with your boy Fitness, and how do you want that to impact the community?
Well, now that we're here, we're not going nowhere. We've been steady growing. We've been open going on 3 months, and have just kind of, exploded. So I'm really happy with what the direction the gym's going. Like I said, we're not going nowhere. We're going to be here for a long time. So it's like right in the middle of the neighborhood. There's an elementary school over there. There's another one here. There's a high school, a middle school. We're kind of in like a cool little area. So like a lot of kids, a lot of adults and parents and stuff who, maybe they want a different flavor for a workout. Man, I don't like running. I'm never gonna run again. I'm almost certain of it. I lift, but like it kind of gets mundane. You come here, you just go there, lift. You have your headphones on. It's kind of boring sometimes, right? You're not very motivated to do it. But this Like, you develop actual relationships, and I love the culture of this gym. I love the vibe of this gym, you know. So now, like, you know, there are people now that show up because they know their training partner is going to be here, you know, so they sacrifice that hour or 2 hours a day with their family to come here and be with their gym family, if you will. And, you know, then you develop like a camaraderie with like your training partner or the other people in the gym. You talk about your day, your kids, you know, your life, all that kind of stuff. And then you go home in such a better mood. You can be a better parent. You can be a better husband or wife or whatever, because you kind of work out your frustrations on the bag or, you know, punching and kicking stuff. And I think in a way, at least for me, anyways, that I never could lifting weights or going for a run, but there's just something about, you know, punching and kicking, and I know I kind of make it sound like you're throwing a fit or whatever, but like, man, you be in the zone, you're dialed in, you know, you're learning like real techniques and combinations and stuff, and then jiu-jitsu, maybe you're having a bad day, and I tell you, if you're a female, the first time you choke out a guy who's bigger than you, you're gonna have the biggest high and rush ever, because you don't think that you can. Like, if you, you know, take a woman who walks in here, she doesn't think that she could, you know, choke you or an iron out, but she absolutely could once she learns a little bit of technique and stuff. So it's also like instant gratification in this as well. And then, you know, then you go home and you're in a much better mood, you know, after you get a workout in, and then you go home and now like you're cooking dinner, or, you know, you're talking to your kid, maybe you have young kids, multiple kids, and like they're all over the place. You can just kind of deal with life better after a good workout and a sweat, and you've been, you know, smiling and laughing, and, you know, when you do that, you release all the feel-good endorphins and hormones in your head. So, man, it's great to see people come in here. Like, I hate that they like maybe had a bad day or they're pissed off, but then whenever they leave, they're always smiling and they're always so grateful. Like, oh, I didn't want to come in, but I feel so much better now that I did. So it's awesome and very rewarding when you see that out of people.
Yeah, I believe combat sports, mixed martial arts in the whole builds a lot of patience and confidence in an individual, and you mentioned it in your recent interview with the local news about how important it can be for the youth, because they might be getting bullied or they might be in a situation where they want to react, but just by participating in those types of sports helps them control that anger.
You know, the thing is you can't escape it anymore. Like, when I was, we didn't have the internet. The internet was like brand new. Like, when I was, maybe not brand new, but like we had like dial-up internet. We definitely didn't have it in our hand on the phone. Like, I had to go tie up the phone line.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, and you know, my mom, she wasn't playing that. You know,
I got in trouble for that.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Getting cussed out over the internet. Now these kids have it in their hand. So if something happens at school and somebody records it or whatever, and now they're tagging them and they're sending it to them. So even when I could like do something dumb at school or whatever, like get in a fight in school or get beat up at school. When I go home, like, that's it. Like, as soon as I get on the bus, you know, of course they're gonna, you know, talk trash on the bus, but then when I go home, like, it's all good. You know, I don't have to, like, you know, now you look at the phone and it's like, God damn, another post,
they posted it.
Yeah.
And nowadays, people, it could have happened 10 years ago. They reposting it 10 years later, keeping it viral.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
It's over with. But you can have the confidence to like combat that and like kind of look past it, because, you know, whatever, dude, like when the kids are in here, they're in here choking each other out, so they're used to it. Like, it happens in here, and they just kind of have that, build that. It's not arrogance, but you can like see it when some of these kids walk in, and, you know, maybe that is happening in school, or somebody's calling them names, picking on them, hitting them or whatever. And they come in here and they've been training here a month, 2 months, 3 months. You know, all of a sudden, you know, they come in there with their head down. Now they're walking with their head up, their shoulders back. You can just see their whole demeanor change, and it's actually exciting. Then their parents are like, yeah, you know, this kid stood up to the kid who's been, you know, messing with them all school year, and, you know, he told them to, you know, whatever. And you know, that's the kind of stuff that I like to hear.
That's good. Yeah, and that's what it's for. So anybody out there, if you are in the Vestavia Hills area or Birmingham or any surrounding areas, or even if you visiting, if you like me and you visit certain places, one thing I like to do to get my workout in is find a local dojo that I can go to and train. And like Eryk said, network and just get to know people to just grow as an individual. So definitely make sure you go to yourboyfitness.com website. You got your schedule there. Check out the drop-in fee if you're ever in town. Make sure you come by. Check the schedule. Make sure you come by. Find the class that you want to attend and get that workout going. If you're in the area, go ahead and get your kids here. I promise you, you aren't going to regret it. I want to tell you, Eryk, I appreciate your time and your energy and allowing me to use some of it to get this interview, man. And let's have some fun.
Yeah.